the data center segment revenues for the sales of chips up 56%, but this was a miss and the second straight quarter of misses. Do you read anything into that?
Yeah, I think that's related mainly to the China factor. They're hoping they get $2 to $5 billion out the door this year to China. I think chips are getting to China. I think that's probably why the U.S. government should relax controls, because the ability of Russia, of China to get their hands on chips is very high. As we see this, just look at the AI developers in China that are doing very, very well. As we see, the stocks in the 10 cents are all doing quite well, and that's because they are showing monetization of their own in-house AI. And also, I think an important point as it relates to China, because you talked about China earlier. This is the models in the open source models. Jensen talked about 50% of all developers are in China of AI. So we really, China is a very important driver of AI growth around the world, and AI growth around the world, and usage and implementation and models leads to GDP growth, leads to deflationary forces that we need because we're in an inflationary environment, leads to productivity improvement. And so the more kind of that China can get, more reasonable performance chips, which they need, and they need the CUDA ecosystem because that's what's dominant globally, then I think it's better for global economic growth as well for everyone. So hopefully we'll get some clarity. I think so far it's been a little positive, right? They've said we will approve H20 on a case-by-case basis. That's kind of standard for what the US DOC has always been. It's been case-by-case. There's red lines, there's green lines. And that was the case with Russia during the Cold War. So if we can just get these approvals going case-by-case, get that speeding up, forget about the 15% charge, because that's probably unconstitutional. You can't actually charge exports in the US. And so the stock, I suspect, would really spike on anything related to the China revenue, because the rest of the business is pretty well known. There's not a lot of mysteries to the growth trajectory, which is very strong, but also largely priced in for the next few months.
So the China figure was not included in Q2, nor was it included in the outlook. So how big could it be? And you mentioned that 50% tariff that the U.S. wants to get a cut in this. If you sell to China, we want part of the action.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, I think. But no, so I think those numbers have dropped dramatically. It used to be 16% of Nvidia's revenue. Now it's down to 6%. So you can imagine that. That the catch-up that you're going to see once that happens. So not only do you get back to 15%, but just imagine you need to make up for the lost. So that's, I think, why Jensen emphasized if we have upside, we'll be able to deliver. So I think they are actually getting ready for upside there. So the risk is to the upside on the stock, in my view.
Any idea what customer, this is outside of China, that actually bought the H20 chip? Now, we know that this is subpar. This is a couple generations behind. $650 million that was booked in the second quarter.
Yeah. No, I don't, but I imagine Southeast Asia, maybe Malaysia, maybe a Chinese user anyway that's offshore, I don't know. But no, the important thing on AI is there's so many different levels of AI capability that you need. That's why a company in China at Cambrian can do so well. There's edge AI. A lot of what Nvidia is driving is super leading edge, massive data centers. You look at the big four cloud providers. Their capex has doubled in 2 years to 600 billion. And Jensen talking about 4 trillion in 4 years doesn't seem hard. We haven't even seen enterprise roll out now, which they're targeting that market. Physical AI, which is robotics and automation, and the whole move to agentic AI. We used to just put in a query and get one answer. Now it's really thinking. Every day when I use it, I'm just surprised. Wow, this is really cool. It gets better and better. The hallucinations are not going away, but they're getting a lot better. And I just see so many use cases proliferating. And I think China has probably will be the biggest beneficiary economically of AI because of their huge manufacturing base and because of the huge population e-commerce. And it really seems to me it's so reminiscent of the wireless boom that we saw in China, because when China went straight to mobile handsets, they didn't need landlines, they went straight to mobile. And then from mobile, they went to mobile internet with 4G. and you had just a massive growth in China's tech sector and e-commerce. And I think putting that together with AI now, because of the huge ecosystems and efficiency, you're going to see a lot of users in China that are the big benefit. So from a portfolio perspective, while we focus on the individual chip players, I think you need to have a broader lens and looking at who are the really beneficiaries of China's usage of AI.
We were talking about CameraCon technology earlier, and this is all in China's self-sufficiency bid. Is it curious to you at all that CameraCon has appeared kind of in my coverage of the stock market? It kind of appeared only recently. I had never heard of the company. Has it piqued your interest? Yeah, no, for sure. It's been around a while. I think they hit some home runs on some products there on the AI side. Look, I was just in Silicon Valley and meeting with friends of Chinese engineers at Meta and Facebook, and you talk to them. So, what engineers doing in China? Like, what do they want to work in Silicon Valley? Do they want to work in? And engineers aren't really political. They just, if they want to leave Meta and start a company or leave a startup, they'll tend to go to China because the resources are there, the engineers are there, and it's lower cost. So, I think for the startup environment, it's a very real risk or reality is there's still going to be continued strength and innovation in China for sure. And this is an example of that on the chip side. I think we're going to see more and more in terms of software. I think the real action is going to be software and implementation. Hardware is just a real tough slog, as we've talked about it. So, because not only is it just about a chip, but it's increasingly about the networking and the scaling of it, which is what Nvidia is clearly dominating in.